I shorten it.
I'm Jim Csek with KelownaNow.
And I'm Renee Merrifield.
And here we are with Beyond the Ballot. We got lots to talk about. Lots
we
happening,
sure do.
right? It's just...
where do we start? They've given us so much.
I think we put the headline as big T's in the news. We got Trudeau and Trump. I think they're kind of like headlining what's going on in the news cycle for sure.
Absolutely. And the last segment, we actually talked about the reference to Trudeau as being the governor of the 51st state. And just in case we were wondering if Trump was serious or not, he decided to tweet it out again this last week to make sure that that he knew that we were all serious about.
I think he's definitely trolling him. Even his son Barron is trolling him now, right? So it's they're all jumping on him. But then Justin Trudeau put out this tweet. Maybe we can play that, Rommel.
Now, it shouldn't be that way. It wasn't supposed to be that way. We were supposed to be on a steady, if difficult sometimes, march towards progress. And yet, just a few weeks ago, the United States voted for a second time to not elect its first woman president. Everywhere, women's rights and women's progress is under attack, overtly and subtly. But I want you to know that I am, and always will be, a proud feminist. You will always have an ally in me and in my government.
There you have it. Not only did he attack Trump, he attacked the American voter.
I know. Now let's be real. There are definitely still biases inside of politics and against female politicians. Any good campaign manager will tell you that it's harder to get a female elected. They'll take more hate online. They take more social media trash. But having said that, to then, as our leader, go out and talk about the election as if it was some great trial of women's rights was absurd in this particular way, shape, and form. And again, he is very disingenuous, and I am a huge Jody Wilson-Raybould fan. Anyone who followed that story, who watched those hearing over and over and over again for days and days and days, knows how poorly she was treated. If you have not read her book, please get it. Indian in the Cabinet, and absolutely phenomenal way of describing what actually happened inside of Trudeau's cabinet against her as a female Indigenous MP. So this is such an Indigenous tweet and brutal representation of Canada.
Yeah, disingenuous, I think you're going to say that. But it's just, I was laying there awake and thinking, why would he do something like that? Why would he poke the bear, because we got all these terrorists, or why would he continue to poke the United States? And the only thing I could think of is that maybe he's looking to fall on the sword and say he's paving the way for Melanie Jolie or something, because I just don't know what would possess him to do something like that.
I think that there are way too many people that are readying their campaigns right now for the Liberal leadership after the trouncing that they'll get in the next election. I also think that from a party perspective, there have to be party officials that are in Trudeau's ear right now, basically telling Trudeau how great he is, how they need him for the next election, because they want him to take out the trash. They want him to literally go out with the loss and make sure that they set the next leader up for success. And the only way you can do that is to let Trudeau be the one to fall on the sword. So he might be in some way, shape, or form. I mean, we saw the New York Times and Melanie Jolie out there basically is like, I might be the next prime minister. Would she like to? Probably. But there are, campaigners already going for Mark Carney's campaign. There are campaigners already going for Christy Clark's campaign. She is out in the media on an ongoing basis, out on the campaign trail for the federal Liberals. I do not see the party actually saying that, yes, now is the time for you to step down. There's just no time to get ready. And if they were to do that, if there was to be a switch, I think that the NDP would jump on the opportunity to call an election and call it fairly quickly.
Yeah, because I would say that that thought came to my mind too, because Melanie Joly would be a threat to the NDP because there's a lot of people that would probably vote NDP to avoid voting for Trudeau. And I think that would probably trigger that election really quickly.
I think so. I think that they would try and do it just like Horgan did, rest in peace. His funeral is this weekend. But him calling that snap election right after Sonia Furstenau was elected was very opportunistic and definitely boded very well for the NDP in 2020.
Staying on Trudeau's cabinet, you mentioned Chrystia Freeland being basically.
My goodness, there are issues. And right now there's so much infighting. Chrystia Freeland came out so boldly on the $40 billion guardrails of her budget. And she really said, like, this is not going to move. This is not, this is all that I need. This is all that I require. She was adamant. And that has fallen by the wayside with the new GST exemptions and $6 billion that is going to go out in these rebate checks. There is just no way that they're staying within that $40 billion. And that Freeland it's her job to actually hold the prime minister to account on that. And I don't think he's being held accountable by anyone at this point. And I think that that's creating huge turmoil between the PMO and Chrystia Freeland right now. They're not happy campers, and you can see it even if you watch Hansard. Some of us geeks actually still go and watch Parliament, but it's just horrible right now, just the amount of tension that's there.
There's rumors out there that says that Mark Carney is already kind of running the finance department, and she's just the face right now.
That's impossible. It's just not how it happens. But I would say that Mark Carney is definitely one of those trusted advisors and has definitely put space in between Freeland and Trudeau.
Yeah. No, it's we can't get a straight answer. They've been asking questions and won't get a straight answer, and it's odd that we can't get a straight answer. It sounds like they're going to give that answer just before they break, right?
Yep, just in the nick of time.
It's just like, and there you go, and we're out. Right?
Well, and we've been talking in the last few segments just about what's happening in Parliament right now. And yes, the Speaker sort of went ahead and said, okay, you have to debate this emergency bill, and so the GST rebate bill is going through right now. But when they come back, we're going to go back to that private motion, and that private motion is still requiring those documents to be revealed. So there is, one of two choices. They either keep, staying in this spiral of doing nothing, or you'll see Trudeau prorogue government, which I don't think that's a choice. I guess the third option would be to call an election, but I just don't see him doing that. He's not courageous enough.
With those polls, I don't like. There's
why
no
would you?
way would you call an election? Like, I don't know.
No.
I don't think he motivated anybody with. We can talk about GST in a bit, but I don't think he motivated anybody with that, and I don't think he motivated anybody with the little speech that he just did there.
No, I think that I think it just speaks to how weak he is against someone like Trump. And whether it's Trump referring to him as governor, the retort back is, well, you're a misogynist. It's just that name calling is so ridiculous. And you see a very different stance actually being taken by two premiers. You've got Doug Ford, who is coming out basically saying, I'm going to cut off your electricity for New York. I'm going to sabotage 1.5 million, U.S. citizens, their power. Mm-hmm. And we're also going to cut off their, mining minerals. And we're also going to, and I mean, he's taking a very tough stance. Yep. Danielle Smith is taking a very diplomatic stance. We're going to negotiate. We can meet your demands because we can toughen up our border and we can do this. But then you have every other premier who's just sitting on their hands basically and really in a time where Canadians need that real strength. I can tell you right now that throughout the business community, there is a lot of fear and trepidation as to what that 25% tariff would look like and how damaging it would be to the Canadian economy. And, right now, I think Doug Ford is hedging his bets and taking a tougher stance than what Trudeau is. I mean, Trudeau is kind of saying, you're a bad person. Well, what even is that?
I think
it's almost ridiculous, and it makes us look very weak on a global stage.
And I think that's the politics of maybe 3 years ago where you find some success with that identity politics and all that. But I think that ship has sailed, though, too.
The
people are tired of it.
Yeah, the world has gone away from it because the world is trying to feed their families and the world is trying to find housing. And the world is like, we are in such a different space and dynamic right now on the global stage. And you see Macron losing his government. You see right of center governments being voted in, largely because they are usually the ones that can right the economy. And you're seeing, the interest rates being cut yesterday morning by a half a point, largely because people are not making ends meet. And our insolvency rates are going up, and that is a scary, scary time for Canadians.
So we'll go on to the carbon tax, and then there's this piece out, another like promoted piece here. The Toronto Star put out a piece reporting an unpublished, non-peer-reviewed study funded by Environment Canada claiming the carbon tax has no impact on food prices in Canada. The food professor, a really good guy on X, you can find him, but he says, meanwhile, we have 2 peer-reviewed studies in high-ranking journals presenting a different perspective. Additionally, 11 papers set to be published in January that which highlight how carbon pricing can exacerbate social and economic inequities. I mean, it's just common sense. GST is a consumption tax, end user tax.
Totally.
The carbon tax is a compounding tax that adds cost throughout the cycle, throughout the cycle, from the seed to the putting it into the toaster. It adds, it's a compounding tax, and they ignore that every time.
Absolutely. And I love what you said there, Jim. It's common sense. When we read things like what Gilbo just said, it's absurd. It doesn't make any, it's not rational. It's not what we know. Anytime, trucking is our largest shipping mode of transportation. So obviously, anytime you ship a food product in any of its various stages, it's going to end up costing more. And to say that that's not true is absurd. Yeah. So of course it's going to go up. And I love that we're starting to sound the alarm bell now, because again, in April, it's going to go up. And we need, Canadians right now, 40% of British Columbians, $200 away from, not making ends meet and not being able to pay their bills. That could be eaten up with that next increase.
You're a home builder, you know that compound interest, because you're saving money in that. And compounding works on almost everything, whether you exercise or whatever. But compounding, that carbon tax, that's what I think people need to drive that home. Yeah. Carbon tax is a compounding tax every time you truck it. Even if you put that plastic bag on the bread.
Every time you heat it, you move it, you truck it. There's so many opportunities for that.
Carbon tax gets added all along the way.
All the way.
All the way.
And there's an economic treatise, one of the fundamental truths that you learn in like Econ 101, and that is that whatever you tax becomes more expensive. So it's like one of the basic fundamentals of economics. So for this non-peer-reviewed study to say that that's not true is just absurd. Yeah. It's offensive to Canadians.
A lot of people would argue that energy is a basic requirement for existence on this planet. It is, because you need heat, right? So we're taxing basic necessities.
Absolutely.
Right? And energy is one of those basic necessities, and putting a tax on our energy, and we can show example time and time again of rich nations and poor nations, and the rich nations have a lot of energy and they know how to deploy it.
Absolutely. And I would go one step further. I think that it is a basic necessity, and I think that taxing a basic necessity should not be allowed. I think the other part of it is it's also needed for prosperity. You look at the most prosperous countries in the world, and they are going to have the lowest energy costs in the world. So I think it's necessary for our survival, but it's also necessary for our actual, progress and prosperity.
So I think a lot of people, when they look to the Middle East and they see the pictures of, like the tragedy in Lebanon and Syria and stuff like that, but you also should look to Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Dubai and all that stuff. They're building some of the largest mega projects in the world that we couldn't even conceive of here in Canada. And they're doing it all with profits from oil and gas.
Absolutely. Let's put it into a context that we'll all understand, right? FIFA was hosted in Qatar, right? That is a huge cost to a country, billions and billions and billions of dollars. What people don't realize is that Qatar is a country of 300,000 people. How could a country the size of the Okanagan host an event of that magnitude? Oil and gas. 100%.
One of the largest mega projects, and you go online and find this, one of the largest mega projects, I mean, multi-trillion-dollar projects is being built in the Middle East, and it's all off oil and gas.
Absolutely.
Right? And
I walked into one of my colleagues' offices the other day, and it had this, and he's quite concerned about environment, and he's quite progressive in some of his beliefs and thinking, etc. And he has a map. He has a map on his wall that actually had the percentages of emissions by country. And I said, "Why do you have this map?" He said, "Just to remind me how insignificant Canada is." And I know we've talked about that before. 1.5% of all emissions are created by Canada. For us to basically put ourselves and the Canadian public into poverty in an effort to reduce emissions, meanwhile, not contemplating what that actually costs the rest of the world in terms of, oil and gas that's produced at a higher emissions rate that's used by other countries, or that has worse, mining, human rights, etc. To not contemplate those aspects of our contribution, I think, is just folly. And I think that we need to get over ourselves and stop looking so myopically. And I love that we're starting to hear some of the leadership, even if they're not, the premiers and the prime minister today, the leadership candidates actually start talking with that sort of language. And it is one of the exciting parts that I will say about Christy Clark. She is an LNG believer, and it's something that I think she would actually be running on if she was to run for the federal Liberals.
It seems like Stephen Guilbeault would sacrifice the citizens of Canada for his own ideological beliefs and it seems
100%.
And it's a story I heard the other day is somebody was upset because they were looking at the food bank, and somebody went in there with a Mercedes, and they're just like, these people, they're going in there with a Mercedes. And I said, maybe think about it for a second. Maybe that person is underwater in their Mercedes. Maybe they owe $20,000 more than that car is worth, and they can barely make their payments. And if they sell that, they said, well, just sell the car. If they sell that car, they owe $20,000, which is due now, which they don't have, obviously, because they're at the food bank. And then they say, well, they could buy a different car. And just like, with what money? Like, if they owe $20,000. So they're,
and to your point, there was a headline.
They're barely keeping the lights on. And then people are starting to attack them. But maybe look at it that's how bad things are.
Yeah, there was actually a headline to that exact point talking about how many British Columbians were underwater on their car payments and on their car values. It is an epidemic right now. It is something that we're facing across Canada. Finally, the Bank of Canada is starting to wise up to it. I think they've done too little, too late, and they went too far on some of the interest.
19-fold in an unprecedented time. And then, they're backing it off slowly. They took the elevator up, and they're taking the staircase down. I mean, thank God they're doing something, but I think they need to do it in a quicker fashion.
I think it was too little, too late, and we're starting to see businesses crumble. We're starting to see the unemployment numbers go up. The big celebration that I've heard telegraphed from Freeland's report is going to be that the GDP per capita is going up. Going up from what? Like, the last, 7 out of 8 quarters, it's gone down. So to go up by 1 quarter, that's not even a trend line yet.
Yeah. So then so we got GDP falling, we got unemployment numbers rising. And then what the Liberal government has done is that, well, you're going to get a GST holiday. That's their solution to it. Like, here you get a GST break. And it's almost like, you're at the gates of the king, and they're throwing some breadcrumbs out there, and then people are supposed to be happy about it. And here's CBC, and I'm not sure if this is a sponsored content piece or not, but it doesn't look like it's fair.
Well, they get a lot of money from the government, so it's always kind of quasi-sponsored.
But it seems to be. But the odd thing is, he's standing in front of the items he's standing in front of
do not get a GST.
Do not have GST on them to begin with. Totally. Like, if he was sitting down next to Doritos and Cheetos and had a beer in his hand, I could buy it. But it's the picture he's trying to paint that is and in some of his early tweets it did say, you're going to get tax off groceries. There is no GST on groceries, right?
No.
If you want to do something good, take tax off off groceries permanently and off children's goods permanently.
Well, and the big, we saw in the headlines this week that the Small Business Association of BC is filing for bankruptcy and going
Sad.
under. Small businesses are dying a death of 1,000 cuts. I cannot say this enough. Can I just do one little plug? If you are spending money this holiday season, spend local. Please go out and buy from your local retailers, from your local, buy the gift cards from those restaurateurs who are locally owned and operated. They are desperate, and January and February are dark times for a lot of those retailers, a lot of those restaurateurs. So please, 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 just please try and support all of our locals, because they are really, really hurting right now. And for going back to Trudeau, for him to further, and when I say a death of 1,000 cuts, it's all of this bureaucracy and all of this transition and all of these new rules and regulations. All of it adds cost for that retailer. We're hearing about retailers that are, I think you guys actually posted the story about the toy store. What did they have? Like 25,000 SKUs?
26,000, yeah.
26,000 SKUs. Okay, and 26,000 SKUs, that is like a retailer going through 26,000 numbers to try and figure out which ones are going to be GST exempt or not. The amount of work and cost and labor and that is going into this, and then for us to hear that it's going to be less than $5 of savings for a person over this holiday season, it is absolutely ridiculous to me that we are going through this. And so if it feels like breadcrumbs, it's because it is. Thank goodness that we're actually hearing from our retailers saying this is not going to work. And sounding the alarm bell, because this is a brutal political trick that literally is not going to have the effect that it's being touted as.
Yeah, you should go watch that interview. It's really good. It's a toy store out of Kamloops and Tumbleweed Toys, and she doesn't have the the capital to have fancy computer systems. That she's got a spreadsheet with 26,000 items on it, and she says about a third of them aren't
Right.
will not get the holiday, because anything over 12 years and over, they don't get the tax break. And then so some things aren't, some things are. And then it's going to cause some discussion at the till too, because people just hear there's no tax on toys, and they're going to go to the counter and they're going to say, oh, there's no tax. And then they're going to have, it's going to cause her some, like more stress in that. And the thing is, the average cost of a toy is about $50. So it's $2.50.
Yeah. This is not going to have the effect. We're already seeing, the polls are not showing any movement whatsoever, because it just feels like such a trinket when the fundamentals of our economy are not thriving, when the fundamentals of people's lives are not working, when you can't get, healthcare, when you can't, when housing is very tenuous. Seniors report out for the province. We've got, over 6,000 seniors waiting for long-term care facilities. We have over 14,000 on wait lists for subsidized housing. And, I know that as a former MLA, one of the things that our constituency office dealt with, and Jody Cleland, my CA, and Sonia Sandu, who is my other CA, oh my goodness, they dealt with so many of our seniors trying desperately to get them help. We had one senior who was living in their car because that was the last asset that they had left, and not making ends meet at all. So we are in desperate times. Our seniors are falling below that poverty line. And this GST rebate check that is about to come in April won't actually apply to seniors. So it's only going to apply to those that have been working full time and are, under that $150,000 threshold, which means you could be making $200,000, $250,000, and still get that $250,000. But if you're on disability or if you're a senior, you're not going to actually receive it. So this is the most brutal political stunt that I've seen in a very long time, and it's not going to work.
And just so people know, the tax is supposed to take effect tomorrow, but it has not been approved yet. It still is in the Senate on the third reading. Yeah. So some people have emailed into us and said, like, small businesses, suck it up. Like, this is what it is. You have lots of time to prepare for it. They don't even know if it is yet.
No,
it's not approved yet. So
it will go into effect retroactively. How does that even work? I mean, it's supposed to go into effect tomorrow, yeah. And literally it will be, if it gets passed, it'll get slammed through tomorrow, and so literally you have 0 minutes to get ready.
And then I guess if you ended up paying the GST, you can send in your receipts to CRA and how fast that'll happen, right?
Yeah, especially for that $3.82.
Yeah, like the stamp will, because the stamp's going up.
Oh wait, and Canada Post is on strike, so your letter's not going to go through.
Yeah, and plus the price of the stamp might negate what you're getting. Right?
Well, and let's talk about Canada Post and the federal government not declaring that as an essential service. Yeah. We've got checks that are not coming through for people. We've got charities that are literally on on their last bit of money because they're not getting their donations that they normally get this time of year or this season. And furthermore, I mean, I love that there's like those memes and different TikToks and everything going on with like UPS, we're doing our part, and FedEx, we're doing our part, and Pure Later, we're doing our part, and then like Canada Post, what? We don't want to work on Saturdays. And, but if you try and mail a letter from here to Calgary right now, it's going to cost you $65 through FedEx. So they're definitely taking their pound of flesh, knowing that there are no other options for people. And that to me is like, come on, get in there, get involved. This has been 4 weeks now. They are so far apart, and really far apart on, you don't want to work Saturdays. Well, Canada Post is bleeding money. Because they can't compete against the other providers because they don't offer the type of service that the other providers are offering. So there's got to be some resolve fairly quickly here.
Yeah, it's clearly an essential service, especially for outlying communities, even for businesses. A lot of businesses that send checks back and forth to each other. I mean, I know that they're phoning us, we're phoning them. Like, how do you want your check? Like, how do we get money? Move back and forth. They should arbitrate them or put them back to work and arbitrate a proper solution. Yes. And maybe they need to change the union management and Canada Post management out so that they can start working together, because it doesn't look like they even want to come close together. And it's to the detriment of most Canadians. And I think both sides are losing any political favor they might have had. And it's Agreed. A terrible time of the year to be doing this.
Agreed. I do not hear sympathy coming for either side. I think it's gone on too long, and I think that ultimately this could be the undoing of Canada Post, because and not just Canada Post, but entity as an organization, because it's simply being the laughing stock right now, and people are angry and upset, and the empathy is long past.
Through rain or snow, but not at Christmas.
Yeah, not at Christmas, and not unless I get everything that I wanted.
Yeah. And then the big news out of the United States, and this was talked about for about a couple of weeks, the Time Person of the Year. They named Donald Trump, the incoming president-elect, as the Time Person of the Year. And we have a little clip to play here. He was ringing the bell at the New York Stock Exchange this morning. That wasn't a rally. That was not a rally.
No, but look at what the stock market has done.
That's what I'm saying. The market has clearly spoken that they want Donald J. Trump in office. And I'm going to, if we listen for a second, we can hear a giant sucking sound. And that is the capital being sucked out of Canada right now, because the tweet that was put out, or whatever it was, tweet or social or whatever it was, where he put out and said, if you have $1 billion to invest, you come to the United States, we'll fast track you, we'll give you this, and just basically we'll pave the road for you. And then in this speech, he was talking to Jim Cramer after that. They're lowering the corporate tax rate to 15%. They're basically saying they want to be the Bitcoin capital of the world. They're saying that they want energy like crazy. They're going to drill, maybe drill. They want electricity. It is becoming like, if you want to do business, why would you pick Canada right now with all these restrictions put into place? It's a tough slug right now. Like, if you have $1 billion worth of capital, where do you want to deploy it?
Absolutely. I think I said that just before the election, was that, this is going to be really difficult for investment dollars coming into Canada. 400 billion has already exited. That's the differential, sorry, between what's come into Canada, what's gone out of Canada over the course of the last 7 years, 8 years, since Trudeau has been in charge of Canada. This is going to continue and continue in very large proportion. We need a prime minister. We need premiers that are signaling that they are open for business. I think Danielle Smith is one of the few that's really done that in an aggressive way. And if we don't, we need to be okay with a horrible economy, with government being the only one employing people, and with money going south. I recently watched a podcast that was put on by MNP, and it was top economists from Scotiabank and some of their top accounting staff who are business advisors, etc. And the question was asked at the very end: "What are you, telling your customers to do right now?" And two things. One is, have a lot of cash reserves to get through the tumult of 2025. It's survive 2025. And then the second thing was go south. Take your money and go south.
Tina,
and
right? There is no alternative.
No, there is no alternative. So I'm watching very carefully, but this is case in point. The tariffs are case in point. Trump is going to create the island of prosperity and opportunity, and if we do not have some sort of response that is stronger than what we have right now, which is name calling, we are going to be left in the dust.
The only good thing I see out of that is you well know, they need us for our resources, and Danielle Smith is making that point. Doug Ford's making that point. What Canada has is abundant natural resources. They need our resources, but we do have an environment minister and a government that seems to want to impede access to our resources. So that's a mismatch.
Absolutely. And yes, Doug Ford is getting very strong. He's saying, like I said, we're going to cut off New York and they won't have electricity. So yeah, there is that kind of strength that I think is coming from a very small area. Is the response for Trump to say, well, we'll get our electricity from somewhere else, or, don't worry about us. Trump has also said that they want to be energy independent. So as much as they rely on us right now for about 10 to 15% of their oil and gas, that, they could shut that down. I think, to be honest, that water is our biggest resource. Too, right? And to get really strong, you'd say, hey, that Columbia River Treaty, if you shut down the USMCA, you know what? We're going to actually shut down the Columbia River Treaty, and that will shut down water that goes all the way down to California. And I think that that's a pretty strong response back. Trump, I don't know if he cares or not, or if he's just going to let the dust settle once he has his way, or if Trump is just, these are idle threats, and in the end, if we tightened up our border and if we did everything, and I mean, our response to that was like, we're going to get some drones and we're going to have some helicopters, like you can't fly a drone 24/7. So that, that's not going to stop the flow of fentanyl over the border from Canada into the US.
For sure. Danielle Smith is doing the hard work. She's down there trying to negotiate some stuff, and resources is what we have. That is our strength.
Absolutely.
That is 100% our strength. And that is a whole bunch of things. And that's where we need to play that hand, not identity politics. That's not going to work against Trump 100%.
No. And you're right to say that, we have an environment minister that has literally, sabotaged our ability to play our poker chips. We have lost our poker chips. We are not the energy giant that we should be. We are not the mining giant. We are not the oil and gas giant. We are not the electricity giant. And we're hardly even the water giant that we should be when it comes to negotiation with our neighboring country. And, China is on their doorstep. Russia is on our doorstep. We border, Russia. This is scary times for us, and I don't know if I've gotten too fear mongering, but honestly, we need to wake up and make sure that we are using the strengths that we have and really reinstilling our citizens with that hope of opportunity and prosperity and strength against the threats of our neighboring countries.
We're trying to keep this under 30 minutes.
Sorry.
There is a great song out there. I've got a brand new roller skate. You got a brand new key. Sounds like the Americans have a brand new roller skate because they've got this age of prosperity they're talking about. We've got the key to our resources. We need to find a way to kind of match ourselves up. We need to find some leadership for sure. And I think, we're right next door. We used to be their biggest trading partner. We're not anymore in that respect either. But we can again one day with the right leadership.
100%. 100%. The great thing about resources, they're still in the ground.
They're still in the ground, still can play those poker chips at some point.
Yeah, agreed.
And we thank you for watching Kelowna Now. We hope you find this informative. And we're here every week. Renee is providing us her time, and this is great. We can talk about all kinds of politics. You can send in some questions too.
I don't get paid for this?
Political capital. I don't know. I think we're trying to really try to open some eyes and maybe help people start to use your common sense in everything, right? So then that's the thing. It's a little bit of a different way we're just openly discussing things. And I think we welcome you to be part of that discussion too. Send in your questions or whatever.
And I'm on X as well. So if you are, and that's a great way, DM me, Renee Merrifield with a 3 at the end. But feel free to reach out in any of the different social media channels. It's me that answers on the other end of that.
You don't have a team of 25 people?
No, I do not.
Neither do I. Anyway, we thank you for watching Kelowna Now.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can